Hello everyone. So my proverb for today is going to be Proverbs 11 verse 11, and it says, "Through the blessing of the upright a city is exalted, but by the mouth of the wicked it is destroyed." And may God bless our reading today, guys. So today we're on chapter 12 of the 5 love languages. We have about 2 more days with the book, and then we'll conclude it. I pray that you guys have been encouraged by it, and want to thank you for tuning in and following along. So let me see what page this is for you following along in the book. This is page 149. Okay. Loving the Unlovely. It was a beautiful September Saturday. My wife and I were scrolling through Reynolda Gardens, enjoying the floral, some of which had been imported from around the world. The gardens had originally been developed by R.J. Reynolds, the tobacco magnate, as a part of his country estate. They are now a part of the Wake Forest University campus. We had just passed the Rose Garden when I noticed Anne, a woman who had begun counseling 2 weeks earlier, approaching us. She was looking down at the cobblestone walkway and appeared to be in deep thought. When I greeted her, she was startled but looked up and smiled. I introduced her to Carolyn, and we exchanged pleasantries. Then, without any lead-in, she asked me one of the most profound questions I have ever heard. "Dr. Chapman, is it possible to love someone whom you hate?" I knew the question was born of deep hurt and deserved a thoughtful answer. I knew that I would be seeing her the following week for another counseling appointment. So I said, "Anne, that is one of the most thought-provoking questions I have ever heard. Why don't we discuss that next week?" She agreed, and Carolyn and I continued our scroll. But Anne's question did not go away. Later, as we drove home, Carolyn and I discussed it. We reflected on the early days of our own marriage and remembered that we had often experienced feelings of hate. Our condemning words to each other had brought us hurt, and on the heels of hurt, anger. And anger held inside becomes hate. What made the difference for us? We both knew it was the choice to love. We had realized that if we continued our pattern of demanding and condemning, we would destroy our marriage. Fortunately, over a period of about a year, we had learned how to discuss our differences without condemning each other, how to make decisions without destroying our unity, how to give constructive suggestions. How to give constructive suggestions. I don't know why I was looking at decision ones above, because when I'm holding the phone and I'm reading it, I'm holding the book with one hand, flipping, and then I'm holding the phone with another. So, okay. So, how to give constructive suggestions without being demanding, and eventually how to speak each other's primary love language. Our choice to love was made in the midst of negative feelings toward each other. When we started speaking each other's primary love language, the feelings of anger and hate abated. In the box, the bubble says, "Is it possible to love a spouse who has become your enemy?" Our situation, however, I'm just going to leave it like this and just read, was different from Anne's. Carolyn and I had both been open to learning and growing. I knew that Anne's husband was not. She had told me the previous week that she had begged him to go for counseling. She had pleaded for him to read a book or listen to a speaker on marriage, but he had refused all her efforts toward growth. According to her, his attitude was, "I don't have any problems. You are the one with the problems." In his mind, he was right. She was wrong. It was as simple as that. Her feelings of love for him had been killed through the years by his constant criticism and condemnation. We're on page 151. After 10 years of marriage, her emotional energy was depleted and her self-esteem almost destroyed. Was there hope for Anne's marriage? Could she love an unlovely husband? Would he ever respond in love to her? So let's talk about love's greatest challenge. I knew that Anne was a deeply religious person and that she attended church regularly. I surmised that perhaps her only hope for a marital survivor was in her faith. The next day, with Anne in mind, I began to read Luke's account of the life of Christ. I have always admired Luke's writing because he was a physician who gave attention to details, and in the first century wrote an orderly account of the teachings and lifestyle of Jesus of Nazareth. And what many have called Jesus' greatest sermon, I read the following words, which I call love's greatest challenge. "But to you who are listening, I say, Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. Do to others as you will have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. It seemed to me that profound challenge written almost 2,000 years ago might be the direction that Anne was looking for. But could she do it? Could anyone do it? And guys, when we review the notes, like on our last day, on day 14, it'll tell you that scripture. But I'm sure many of you know it because we've done a Luke series and you probably just know it. But it's in the book. But we'll go over it with the notes. I'm just kind of reading them as we have it for each day, you know. Okay, so it seemed to me that that profound challenge written almost 2,000 years ago might be the direction that Anne was looking for, but could she do it? Could anyone do it? Is it possible to love a spouse who has become your enemy? Is it possible to love one who has cursed you, mistreated you, and expressed feelings of contempt and hate for you? And if she could, would there be any payback? Would her husband ever change and begin to express love and care for her? I was astounded by this further word from Jesus' sermon. Give and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. Excuse me, guys. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Could that principle of loving an unlovely person possibly work in a marriage as far gone as Anne's? I decided to do an experiment. I would take as my hypothesis that if Anne could learn her husband's primary love language and speak it for a period of time so that his emotional need for love was met, eventually he would reciprocate and begin to express love to her. I wondered, would it work? I met with Anne the next week and listened again as she reviewed, excuse me guys, I left my water in the room, as she reviewed the hurts in her marriage. At the end of her hypnosis, she repeated the question she had asked in Renolda Gardens. This time she put it in the form of a statement. Dr. Chapman, I just don't know if I can ever love him again after all he has done to me. Have you talked about your situation with any of your friends, I asked. With 2 of my closest friends, she said, and a little bit with some other people. And what was their response? Get out, she said. They all tell me to get out, that he will never change, and that I'm simply prolonging the agony. But I just can't bring myself to do that. Maybe I should, but I just can't believe that's the right thing to do. It seems to me that you are torn between your religious and moral beliefs that tell you it is wrong to get out of the marriage and your emotional pain which tells you that getting out is the only way to survive, I said. That's exactly right, Dr. Chapman. That's exactly the way I feel. I don't know what to do. I am deeply sympathetic with your struggle. I continue. You are in a very difficult situation. I wish I could offer you an easy answer. Unfortunately, I can't. Both of the alternatives you mentioned, getting out or staying in, will likely bring you a great deal of pain. Before you make that decision, I do have one idea. I'm not sure it will work, but I'd like you to try it. I know from what you have told me that your religious faith is important to you and that you have a great deal of respect for the teachings of Jesus. She nodded. I continued. I want to read something that Jesus once said that I think has some implication to your marriage. I read slowly and deliberately. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. Do to others as you will have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. Does that sound like your husband? Has he treated you as an enemy rather than as a friend? She paused. Yes, she said quietly. Has he ever cursed you? I asked. Many times. Has he ever mistreated you? Often. And has he told you that he hates you? Yes. Okay, let's talk about the 6-month experiment. But I'm just going to read, guys. So if you have the book, you can follow along. It's just going to be easier for me to just leave the camera like this. But I will kind of put it like this so you guys can kind of see. But I am reading it, to you guys. So, okay. So the 6-month experiment. And this is page 154. If you are willing, I would like to do an experiment. I would like to see what would happen if we apply this principle to your marriage. Let me explain what I mean. I went on to explain to Anne the concept of the emotional tank and the fact that when a tank is low, as hers was, we have no feelings toward our spouse but simply experience emptiness and pain. I told her that if we could learn to speak each other's primary love language, that emotional need could be met and positive feelings could grow again. Does that make sense to you? I inquired. Dr. Chapman, you have just described my life. I've never seen it so clearly before. We were in love before we got married, but not long after our marriage, we came down off the high and we never learned to speak each other's love language. My tank has been empty for years, and I'm sure his has also. Dr. Chapman, if I had understood this concept earlier, maybe none of this would have happened. We can't go back in, I said. All we can try to do is make the future different. I would like to propose a 6-month experiment. I'll try anything, Ann said. I liked her positive spirit, but I wasn't sure whether she understood how difficult the experiment would be. Let's begin by stating our objective, I said. If in 6 months you could have your fondest wish, what would it be? Ann sat in silence for some time. Then thoughtfully she said, I would like to see us doing things together, going places together. I would like to feel that he is interested in my world. I like him to listen to me. I like to feel that he values my ideas. I would like to see us taking trips together and having fun again. I would like to know that he values our marriage more than anything. Ann paused and then continued. On my part, I would like to have warm, positive feelings toward him again. I would like to gain respect for him again. I would like to be proud of him. Right now, I don't have those feelings. I was writing as Ann was speaking. When she finished, I read aloud what she had said. That sounds like a pretty lofty objective, I said, but is that really what you want, Ann? More than anything. Then let's agree, I said, that this will be our objective. In 6 months, we want to see you and Glenn having this kind of love relationship. Now, let me suggest a hypothesis. Let's hypothesize that if you could speak Glenn's primary love language consistently for a 6-month period, that somewhere along the line, his emotional need for love would begin to be met. As his emotional tank filled, he would begin to reciprocate love to you. I continue. You understand that this places all the initiative in your hands. Glenn is not trying to work on his marriage. You are. But if you can channel your energies in the right direction, there is a good possibility that Glenn will eventually reciprocate. I read the other portion of Jesus' sermon recorded by Luke the physician. Give and it will be given to you. Right? This is Luke 6:38. A good measure pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be poured into your lap. For what the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Generally speaking, if we are kind and loving toward people, they will tend to be kind and loving toward us. That does not mean that we can make a person kind by being kind to him. We are independent agents. Thus, we can spurn love and walk away from love, or even spit into the face of love. There is no guarantee that Glenn will respond to your acts of love. We can only say that there is a good possibility he will do so. So now let's talk about I Want to Be a Better Wife to You on page 156. We then discussed Ann and Glenn's primary love language. I guess hers was quality time, and Ann confirmed it. In our early days, we spent long hours talking together, doing things together. I really felt loved. More than anything, I wish that part of our marriage could return. When we spend time together, I feel like he really cares, but when he's always doing other things, I feel like business and other pursuits are more important than our relationship. And what do you think Glenn's primary love language is? I inquired. I think it is physical touch, and especially the sexual part of the marriage. I know that when I felt more loved by him and we were more sexually active, he had a different attitude. I think that's his primary love language. Does he ever complain about the way you talk to him? Well, he says I nag him all the time. He also says that I don't support him and that I'm always against his ideas. Then let's assume, I said, that physical touch is his primary love language and words of affirmation is his secondary love language. The reason I suggest the second is that if he complains about negative words, apparently positive words will be meaningful to him. Now, what if you go home and say to Glenn, I've been thinking about us and I've decided that I would like to be a better wife to you. So if you have any suggestions, I want you to know that I'm open to them. You can tell me now, or you can think about it and let me know what you think. But I would really like to work on this. Whatever his response, negative or positive, simply accept it as information. That initial statement lets him know that something different is about to happen in your relationship. And the bubble says you will probably have to rely heavily on your faith in God in order to do this. Then, based upon your guess that his primary love language is physical touch, and my suggestion that his secondary love language would be words of affirmation, focus your attention on those two areas for 1 month. If Glenn comes back with a suggestion as to how you might be a better wife, accept that information and work it into your plan. Look for positive things in Glenn's life and give him verbal affirmation about those things. In the meantime, stop all verbal complaints. If you want to complain about something, write it down in your personal notebook rather than saying anything about it to Glenn this month. Excuse me, guys. Okay. Begin taking more initiative in physical touch and sexual involvement. Surprise him by being aggressive, not simply responding to his advances. Set a goal to have sexual intercourse at least once a week the first 2 weeks and twice a week the following 2 weeks. Ann had told me that she and Glenn had sexual intercourse only once or twice in the past 6 months. I figured this plan would get things off dead center rather quickly. Oh, Dr. Chapman, this is going to be difficult, Ann said. I have found it hard to be sexually responsive to him when he ignores me all the time. I felt used rather than loved. Hold on, guys. Sorry about that, guys, because I'm not in the room where I usually record when I'm reading the book and have my water, but it's fine. Okay, so she told him this is going to be difficult and said, I have found it hard to be sexually responsive to him when he ignores me all the time. I have felt used rather than loved in our sexual encounters. He acts as though I'm totally unimportant all the rest of the time, and then he wants to jump in bed and use my body. Your response has been natural and normal, I assure Ann. Usually, if a wife feels loved by her husband, she will desire sexual intimacy. If she does not, she will likely feel used in the sexual context. That is why loving someone who is not loving you is extremely difficult. It goes against our natural tendencies. You will probably have to rely heavily upon your faith in God in order to do this. Perhaps it will help if you read again Jesus' sermon on loving your enemies, loving those who hate you, loving those who use you, and then ask God to help you practice the teachings of Jesus. I could tell that Ann was following what I was saying. Her head was nodding ever so slightly. Her eyes told me she had a lot of questions. She had lots of questions. But, Dr. Chapman, isn't it being hypocritical to express love sexually when you have such negative feelings toward the person? Perhaps it would be helpful for us to distinguish between love as a feeling and love as an action, I said. If you claim to have feelings that you do not have, that is hypocritical, and such false communication is not the way to build intimate relationships. But if you express an act of love that is designed for the other person's benefit or pleasure, it is simply a choice. You are not claiming that the action grows out of a deep emotional bonding. You are simply choosing to do something for his benefit. I think that must be what Jesus meant. Certainly, we do not have warm feelings for people who hate us. That would be abnormal. But we can do loving acts for them. That is simply a choice. We hope that such loving acts... Excuse me, guys, about all that. We hope that such loving acts will have a positive effect upon their attitude and behavior and treatment. But at least we have chosen to do something positive for them. My answer seemed to satisfy Ann, at least for the moment. I had the feeling that we would discuss that again. I also had the feeling that if the experiment was going to get off the ground, it would be because of Ann's deep faith in God. After the first month, I said, I want you to ask Glenn for feedback on how you are doing. We're on page 159, guys, for you following along in the book. Using your own words, ask him, Glenn, you remember a few weeks ago when I told you I was going to try to be a better wife? I want to ask how you think I am doing. Whatever Glenn says, accept it as information. Whatever his response, do not argue, but accept it and assure him that you are serious about being a better wife, and if he has additional suggestions, you are open to them. Follow this pattern of asking for feedback once a month for the entire 6 months. Whenever Glenn gives you the first positive response, you will know that your efforts are getting through to him emotionally. 1 week after you receive the first positive feedback, I want you to make a request to Glenn, something that you would like him to do, something in keeping with your primary love language. For example, you may say to him one evening, Glenn, do you know something I would like? Glenn, do you know something I would like to do? Do you remember how we used to go take walks and renew the gardens together? I like to go do that with you on Thursday night. The kids are going to be staying at my mom's. Do you think that would be possible? Make the request something specific, not general. Don't say, I wish we would spend more time together. That's way too vague. How will you know when he's done it? But if you make your request specific, he will know exactly what you want, and you will know that when he does it, he is choosing to do something for your benefit. Do this each month. If he does it, fine. If he doesn't do it, fine. But when he does it, you will know that he is responding to your needs. In the process, you are teaching him your primary love language because the requests you make are in keeping with your love language. If he chooses to begin loving you in your primary love language, your positive emotions toward him will begin to resurface. Your emotional tank will begin to fill up, and in time, the marriage will in fact be reborn. Dr. Chapman, I would do anything if that could happen, Ann said. Well, I responded, it will take a lot of hard work, but I believe it's worth a try. I'm personally interested to see if this experiment works and if our hypothesis is true. I would like to meet with you regularly throughout this process, perhaps every 2 weeks, and I would like you to keep records on the positive words of affirmation that you give Glenn each week. Also, I would like you to bring me your list of complaints that you have written in your notebook without stating them to Glenn. Perhaps from the felt complaints, I can help you build specific requests for Glenn that will help meet some of those frustrations. Eventually, I want you to learn how to share your frustrations and irritations in a constructive way, and I want you and Glenn to learn how to work through those irritations and conflicts. But during this 6-month experiment, I want you to write them down without telling Glenn. Anne left, and I believe that she had the answer to her question. Is it possible to love someone whom you hate? In the next 6 months, Anne saw a tremendous change in Glenn's attitude and treatment of her. The first month, he treated the whole thing lightly. But after the second month, he gave her positive feedback about her efforts. In the last 4 months, he responded positively to almost all of her requests, and her feelings from him began to change drastically. Glenn never came for counseling, but he did listen to some of my CDs and discuss them with Anne. He encouraged Anne to continue her counseling, which she did for another 3 months after our experiment. To this day, Glenn swears to his friends that I am a miracle worker. I know, in fact, that love is a miracle worker. Perhaps you need a miracle in your own marriage. Why not try Anne's experiment? Tell your spouse that you have been thinking about your marriage and have decided that you would like to do a better job of meeting his or her needs. And we thank God for the restoration of these marriages too, right, guys, too? He uses natural and supernatural means, right? He's a great God. Okay, tell your spouse that you have been thinking about your marriage and have decided that you would like to do a better job of meeting his or her needs. Ask for suggestions on how you could improve. His suggestions will be a clue to his primary love language. If he makes no suggestions, guess his love language based on the things he has complained about over the years. Then for 6 months, focus your attention on that love language. At the end of each month, ask your spouse for feedback on how you are doing and for further suggestions. Whenever your spouse indicates that he is seeing improvement, wait 1 week and then make a specific request. The request should be something you really want him to do for you. If he chooses to do it, you will know that he is responding to your needs. If he does not honor your request, continue to love him. Maybe next month he will respond positively. If your spouse starts speaking your love language by responding to your request, your positive emotions toward him will return, and in time your marriage will be reborn. I cannot guarantee the results, but scores of people whom I have counseled have experienced the miracle of love. In page 162, and then that's going to conclude this chapter. Here are the notes. It says, if your marriage is in the serious trouble discussed in this chapter, you need to begin by making a strong commitment of the will to undertake the following experiment. You risk further pain and rejection, but you also stand to regain a healthy and fulfilling marriage. Count the cost. It's worth the attempt. Okay, so number 1, ask how you can be a better spouse. And regardless of the other's attitude, act on what he or she tells you. Continue to both seek more input and comply with those wishes with all your heart and will. Assure your spouse that your motives are pure. Number 2, when you receive positive feedback, you know there is progress. Each month, make one non-threatening, but specific requests that is easy for your spouse. Make sure it relates to your primary love language and will help replenish your empty tank. Number 3, when your spouse responds and meets your need, you will be able to react with not only your will but your emotions as well without overreacting. Continue positive feedback and affirmation of your spouse at these times. Number 4, as your marriage begins to truly heal and grow deeper, make sure you don't rest on your laurels and forget your spouse's love language and daily needs. You're on the road to your dreams, so stay there. Put appointments into your schedule to assess together how you're doing. And guys, going back to the contents, so what we have left is chapter 13, a personal word, and we're going to break that down over the course of 2 days, which will be Monday, Lord's willing, Tuesday. So it's going to consist of pages 165 through 205, and it's a personal word, frequently asked questions. They have the 5 love languages profile for couples. They have one for him and her, and then the notes. And again, this is the collection, guys. I always try to show you guys this during the videos. This is the collection. That's the website, 5lovelanguages.com. You can go there for books, resources. I believe you can also take a quiz there as well. And thank you guys for tuning in and joining. God bless. And I'll see you guys back on here in the next video. Have a great day.